At the very mention of Israel and Palestine, many of us either bristle with the frustration and anger born of hardship and loss, or glaze over, already lost in a swirl of historical fact and conjecture. Perhaps because of those very reactions, and most certainly because the Regent Theater just premiered a powerful documentary about these two Middle Eastern neighbors entitled Voices Across the Divide, we turn today to a conversation about Palestine and Israel. Joining me is Alice Rothchild, a physician who long ago turned her healing efforts to these two peoples, whether authoring the book Broken Promises, Broken Dreams, Stories of Jewish and Palestinian Trauma and Resilience, co-founding and now co-chairing American Jews for a Just Peace, or writing and directing Voices Across the Divide. Ms. Rothchild brings a healing voice and perspective to this generation's old conflict. Welcome, Alice.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me. What were your earliest memories of what it meant to be Jewish in the United States at the time, and what it was that Israel was about?
So I think my earliest memories have to do with family. I had a mother who was a writer. She wrote about Jewish immigration and survivors of the Nazi Holocaust, Jews growing up in suburbia. All the stuff that was going on was her material. In terms of our relationship to Israel, we just thought it was a fabulous place. It was a place where there was going to be a country that would be a light unto the nations. It was a place that had sort of socialism and kibbutzim, and it was magical. So that was how my identification started.
Separate from that, of course, was the other side of the equation, sort of naturally evolving in Israel with relative to Palestine. How did you, your family, your wider community perceive Palestinians and their growing claim to a homeland in the Middle East?
Well, first of all, there was no word Palestinian. Mm-hmm. They were Arabs. And we had no understanding that there was an actual lives and cities and libraries and institutions and a whole world that existed before the State of Israel. I grew up with the land without a people without a land, and the Arabs was sort of an incidental annoyance that happened to get in our way. So they weren't a topic of conversation. They weren't a topic that was public in my community. It was just, they were the enemy, and we were fighting them so that we could have a safe place to be, and that was the full framing.
Whether it be Israeli or whether it be Palestinian in Voices Across the Divide, your documentary, what was striking was the commonality in terms of, geez, I had never met a Palestinian. I had never met an Israeli. Mm-hmm. And that separation is essentially, supporting our different perspectives of our history.
Right.
Yeah. And my sense would be that that's what you hope to encourage amongst audiences to mm-hmm. Voices Across the Divide.
Right. I mean, it's very easy to hate someone you don't know that you think is the enemy. Mm-hmm. And this is true of all conflicts. So the first step is to say, okay, let's look this person in the eye and see who they are.
Sure.
And the thing that has really struck me is, first of all, that I'm so welcome in the Palestinian community, and that I'm like, you really going to welcome me into your house? I'm like the Jewish oppressor. My name is Rothschild. Mm-hmm. But people make a distinction between, an Israeli soldier who's coming to take your kid in the middle of the night, right, and this nice Jewish doctor who happens to show up on your doorstep and really wants to listen and hear. Right. And that's good, because mm-hmm. that means we're all retaining our humanity as people.
Practical efforts can people right here in Arlington take to try and affect policy, to try and shift how Israel and Palestine are talking to one another?
Well, I think there's a lot that people can do. The first thing is that people need to understand the history. So just getting educated, reading books, going to websites. I mean, there's a huge amount of information out there that is very accessible at this point. That is not only the predominant narrative that gives other people's versions of what happened.
In the end, our histories, no matter how illuminating or misleading, flattering or damning, are about the past. We, of course, are left with the mission of fashioning our futures. Our question, will they be separate and distinct futures, or might we aspire to a future that is shared? For Alice Rothchild, I'm Peter Bermudez for Arlington Public News.